All right, we're back, and we are COMP392, and it's week 5, lesson 5, part 2 of our broadcast. We started talking about gulp in the last video, and I talked about its usage. And I'm up here in this piece here. We've done this part. We've created our transpiler. There's a couple of other tasks here that I want you to take a look at. One of them is this watch task. Take a look at this watch task, right? So I want to do this next. I want to skip down to line 53 up online. I want to show you this watch task. So in order for you to use watch, you need to include gulp, right? Gulp connect, right? And we'll talk about this in a second. If you don't have, I mean, it's part of our, actually, sorry, let me go back. It's built into gulp. But in order for us to make it run properly, what we want to be able to do is call this watch task. So it's a task that we've made. And notice what it says. It says this task, the way I've got it in, it watches TypeScript files, JavaScript files, and HTML files for any changes, right? Okay, that's cool. And then it has a dependency that it looks at. It says, do this thing. So if something changes, watch, remember I used those variables? Watch those sources, and if anything changes, transpile. That's how simple it is. So let's just copy this, but let's not do these ones yet. Let's just do the first one, right? So grab these 3 things, and if I was gonna go back to here, right? And I put that in there for a second like this, right? I want to get rid of these last 2 because they don't make any sense. Let me explain this. So this is what your task should look like right now. It should be gulp task watch, right? And then it needs transpile as a dependency. It's going to say, it's going to say, well, if the stuff that's in these folders here and matching this pattern here for TypeScript inside scripts or typings changes, if anything changes, right? Then call the transpile task. Right? Okay, follow me here. So let's try this out. So I'm going to save this, go back to command line, clear the screen, right? And call watch. Now watch what watch does. It's a little bit different. Before we would return to the command line. So for example, if I do gulp, if I do transpile, right? Then it returns me, does this thing, and then I get control back, right? Well, gulp watch, my watch uses the gulp watch method, this watch task I made, that I named it watch. You can name it whatever you want, right? It does the gulp watch method, and what it does this. It says, if I go gulp watch now and press enter, it does it, and then it just sits there. It's watching for any of my TypeScript files to change. Right? Let's test this to see that it's working. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to look at my scripts file, and I'm going to go into my objects, sorry, into my core. I'm going to look at my game.ts, because hey, we are doing a Three.js course, right? And down in here, I have a couple things I want to change. Notice that my game object, which is my plane geometry, is 16 by 16 by 1 by 1. Let's change this to 20 by 20, a little bit bigger, 20 by 20 by 1 by 1. And my Lambert material, which is this funky color, let's make the background material, so my plane, I want it to be a blue plane, right? So more of a blue plane. What's the color blue, or closer to a color blue that you like? RGB, right? So red, 0, 0, green, 0, 0, blue, FF would be pure blue. I don't want to make it exactly pure blue. Let's make it so that it's, you know, something like 1, 1, or maybe a couple of, you know, a little bit just off pure blue, right? Here we go. Save. And I've just saved this file, right? I saved it. I didn't transpile anything. Let's go back to my command line. Look what's happened. As soon as I saved, it transpiled everything. I didn't do a Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B. And if I looked at my game.js file now, notice that my JavaScript file has also changed to reflect those changes. So if I go back to where my JavaScript works, notice that it's 202011, and my background color for my my cube material is 0x1111ff. Okay? Huh? Yeah. So that's what the task does, and it keeps running. It'll keep running forever, my watch task, until I do Control-C, which breaks out of my task. Right? So it'll watch my files until something changes, and then I'll run something. Well, I want to kind of do the same thing for other things, and I'll show you how these work, right? So I've got my watch task, And I want to create another task for my HTML like I had in my CSS. So if anything changes there, I want to do the same thing, right? Let's try that. So I'm going to go back to online, and let's get my HTML and CSS task now. I think this is pretty clear what's happening. Just don't pipe it into connect reload because we haven't done that piece yet. So I'm going to kind of grab these two pieces, and we'll put all that reload stuff later on. So these are the two tasks I'm getting up online. I'm going to go back to my my stuff here, just underneath my transpile task. I'm just going to press paste and get rid of all this, right? So I just get rid of my pipe. I'm not piping it into reload for a second. And there's a reason for this. Okay, cool. Now let me change. So that's the first thing. I need to have tasks to run. So my HTML task says, hey, something's changed. When something changes in my gulp source, here's my gulp sources, right? Once that happens, you know what? I want you to watch it and run my HTML change. Same thing for my my CSS. It's just going to know that something's changed. It's not going to do anything yet. All it's going to know, it's going to do something's changed. I want you to be able to detect the change happening right now. That's the first piece. In order for us to do this, we need to do two more watch tasks, right? And it looks just the same. Let's just type them this time. So I'll say gulp.watch. And then the name of the path, which is going to be for the first one, is HTML sources. So I'm going to look at my HTML sources path. Then I'm going to say, when I'm done, in square brackets, which means look at this array, I want to look at my HTML. I want to run my HTML task. And all my HTML task does is says, it'll just pump out to the like a log file that says something's changed, right? And then I'll do the same thing for my CSS. I'm going to copy and paste here, except I'm going to say, instead of HTML sources, it's going to look at CSS sources. That's what it's going to do, and say, hey, when something changes on the CSS side, you know, run my CSS task. Now this doesn't do much right now, right? But you can imagine if I had my CSS, or if this wasn't CSS, if it was SAS or less, if you're writing a precompiled language, right? For SAS or less, you're using variables in your CSS, which is the right thing to do. You could do the same thing we did here with our transpile. And by the way, there's something called gulp SCSS, another module you can download that has its own APIs that allow you to, if you follow the configuration details, to basically convert SCSS into pure CSS, right? Which is kind of you know, a really cool thing to do. Okay, so that's cool. So if I run my watch task, it's not going to do anything. But if I want to run my watch task right now, if I go gulp watch, right, it's going to watch, right? Still running watch. But now if I change something on my HTML, just to show you what it does, I mean, it's not going to do anything, but I just want to change something. Let's, for example, add a meta tag to my HTML. So we'll say meta, the character set is equal to UTF-8, because we don't have that in this little project, right? And I press save, and if I go back to my gulp task, it says, hey, HTML's changed. So it knows exactly when your HTML or CSS or anything has changed. And that's really cool, because then if you know it's changed, you can do something like reload the browser, which is where that connect reload comes into place, right? Okay. So that's the second thing I wanted to show you. So just want to explain everything so you know what it all does. So you don't look at it and go, what the hell is all this stuff, right? Okay, so we've done our watch task. This isn't going to change anymore. This is done. These, we've just taken out the pipe command, and all I'm saying is take the HTML sources and pipe it into the, you know, to this, start running this connect reload thing, which we don't have yet running, right? We don't have a reloader running, right? Well, this is the task that I need here, this one right here, to live reload my site, this one right here, okay? Or to reload my server, right? That's what it's going to do. It's going to reload, or on the base, this is the root right here. This root, you could change this root to point to any folder. So let's say, for example, all your files are in an app folder, right? Like, for example, if you're using Node.js and you have your files all inside a public folder, instead of it pointing to // which is the root of your project files, you can make it pop up, look at public views as an example. And if your views change, right, as an example, right, I want you to run that index.html thing. I want you to reload your tasks. Okay, but there's two pieces to this for you to make this run, right? One piece is your connect task, and the other piece, they kind of go hand in hand, is your open task. Let's just do this first piece first, this connect. So when I go here, right, and I'm going to kind of copy it here. You don't need this piece yet, and I'll show you what it does. Right, so I'm going to copy this piece, and we'll explain it in a second. I'm going to go back to here into my gulp file.js. Here's my gulp file.js, and I'm going to put this. Now, by the way, the order that I'm putting it in doesn't matter because it's JavaScript. You can put it in any order you want. I'm putting it in order so you see how it's logical to you, but it doesn't have to be this way. So now I'm calling this task connect, right? This connect task is going to create a server. That's what it's going to do. And it's going to go on port 8080, right? 8080. And every time you make a change, it's going to reload that server. Now, this is cool. That won't work for you, but it will work for everybody else. And in order for us to make that change, remember we made some changes here. When we call a task, I want to call that connect reload, right? Let's take a look at what that looks like again online. Going up to the first one, I want to pipe. This is the exact same piping that I'm going to do for each of my my tasks. I'm going to go pipe connect reload. So when I do my transpile, I'm going to reload my files. When I change an HTML file, I'm going to reload my files, or reload my server, my browser. And whenever I do my CSS change, I want to reload my browser. So this pipe connect reload, I want to attach it to the end of these tasks. So I'm going to copy this thing, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to put that in, but I have to put it in the right place. Notice that it says on, and this is like a JSON file, yeah? Where if you have all these things are kind of, it's kind of like called chaining, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to chain the methods one after the other, right? I need to chain this message. So I got rid of this semicolon here, right? And I'm going to put it back here with its own semicolon. So it's going to pipe after you do all this, then it's going to go to connect reload. We'll do the same thing for these tasks. I'm going to get rid of the semicolon and then pipe it into connect reload, right? Do the same thing, pipe it into connect reload. I'm not going to do it here because my watch task, all it does is watch, right? So now what's going to happen is this. When my TypeScript sources change, it's going to transpile, and when I transpile, it's going to do its transpilation. At the bottom, it's going to reload my browser. That's what it's going to do. Let's run this thing and see what happens. I'm going to run the watch task. So I'm going to stop. First of all, you have to stop this because it's already running a task. It won't know that things have changed in my gulp file. So I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm going to say gulp watch. And what gulp watch does is it does exactly that. It watches for something to happen, right? Oh man, how come my my connect didn't work, right? Well, let me just pull that up again, and of course I just close that off, right? So if I do gulp, sorry, if I go back to that thing again, let me go back there for a second. That was bad what I just did. You'll see why. Right, so I'm gonna go back here. Let's see how it's not working now. Let's try that again. Back here into terminal, yay. And if I go gulp watch, right, there it is, it's watching, right? But where's my, how come reload's not working, right? It's not showing me where it's gonna be, nothing like that's happening, and because it's never getting there. Should have done that. The reason for that is because, I wanna show you this, right? Because I'm calling my watch task, and my watch task just watches these files. And then it calls a reload. It's the only time it's going to reload, right? My connect reload is going to call if something changes. But I've never run my connect task at all. So this kind of goes down to say this. I need to be able to run my connect task, right? And then I got to run my watch task all at the same time. And I can do that with another task. We're going to call that the default task. So let me take a look at that. So up online, notice that the bottom line here, this gulp task, we're going to call it default. It's going to run all of this stuff for the very first time in order. So first it's going to transpile. It's going to check out my HTML. It's going to check out my CSS for changes. It's going to do the connect. This is the server it's going to run. It's going to do this other thing, which we're going to take off for now. We're not going to do open yet. And then it's going to do the watch. All right? So let's do this last piece here. Okay, cool. I'm going to put this at the bottom. Right? I'm going to take off open because we don't have open yet. We'll put it back in a second. So you can see that. I just want you to show you all the differences, what it does. So this is my task here. I'm going to save this. And notice what this does. This task, all it does, it says, these are my dependencies for this task. This task is called default. The default task means I can just say gulp inside on my command line, and it'll run this default task. I don't have to call it gulp default. It just call gulp by itself, which is cool. So then what it does, it says it'll run the transpile, which it'll transpile all files for the first time, HTML, CSS. Then it'll run the connect server. Then it'll run the watch task. Let's try this out. Oh, you probably have to do it in the right place, Tom. All right, let's try this out for the first time. So I'll say gulp, enter. If everything goes well, it's going to say, hey, your server started at localhost 8080. Let's try this out. So I'm going to go to 8080, right? Localhost 8080, and now I have this with a blue background, a little bit of a dark blue background, right? And all this stuff, right? Okay, cool. Well, that's where my stuff is loading. Let's put this off to the side, right? And I want to put this down here for a second so you can see. It's kind of hard to see it in this cramped screen. But notice how this is over here, and I want to make a change over here. So I'm going to kind of just scrunch these files in for a second and make this a little bit smaller so you guys can see what's happening all at the same time. So I want to make a change to my files. I'm going to go to my folders here, and I want to look at my, I go into my scripts, into my core, my game.ts file. And in my game.ts file, you know what? I figured out that I don't like this color, right? I don't like the color. So I want to go back to the previous color that I had for my plane, right? Or another lighter color, right? So I'm going to go with a RGB pure blue now. I want to make these 0, 0. So 0, 0, 0, and press, ready? Save. When I press save, it transpiles, right? And now it automatically reloaded. See that? If I want to make it a different color to make it really dramatic, let's say FF, and then save, right? So I save it, bam, it reloads, right? And I want to save this again, right? So I'll put one of these F, right? Save, and then transpile, right? So it'll kind of do right away. Every single time it does it, it transpiles and it reloads my page, right? Let's change some of these values to make it something else. Let's say 5, save, bam, it reloads the page. And sometimes what happens is if you don't see the color changes, let's do 3, right? And then maybe more R, so more red, right? To make it more red color. Notice how it does it automatically. Right? Every time I make a change, bam, my browser's reloading, right? I want to do that because I don't want to wait for my browser to go into my browser every single time like we've been doing this whole time and reloading everything because it's a pain, right? It hurts me to do that every time. And every time I saw it, I was like, God, I got to teach these guys how to do gulp because that's the, kind of a really cool thing to do. A lot of times, though, one more thing before we end for the day, and this is part of your lab 3. Once we're done, and if you're following me along, lab 3 is done and an in, right? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Take a look at this now. There's one piece that's missing from our little process, which is that last piece, that open piece. And this is a little different for every operating system. That's why I kind of left it to last, right? It's not 100% urgent for you to get this piece done, right? But I want to show it to you because that's the piece we're missing, all right? Let me show you this piece. It's up online already, which is over here. Here. It's this task, this open task. Open, what it does is it says this. When you call this task, it opens up a browser automatically, right? So for the first time, when you're running your project, if I just call gulp, I'm running in a browser and I'm testing my file automatically. Right? I don't have to wait. By the way, you can set this up so it opens up in Azure at the same time, right? I'm just leaving it to you how to do that, but notice how the URI is right there, and my app is Chrome, right? So I can put whatever URI I want here. For example, my Azure URI, when you want to test. You can put both by having an extra pipe command. So I can actually pipe them up at the same time. So here's my local environment, and here's what I got on Azure, and they can run at the same time, all right? Let's include this task now and also change our default task in the bottom to include the open task, right, when it runs everything. So I'm going to copy this, right, and I'm going to go back over here, right, to my my files. I'm just going to include this one on the bottom underneath my connect task. And then, again, it doesn't matter. The order doesn't really matter. I'm going to create this open task, right? And I want to, just before my watch task, just before I start watching, I want to open up my browser. It makes sense, right? So the first thing I do is transpile, then I check my HTML and CSS files for the first time. I do my connect, which creates my server, and then I open it up my browser live, because the live reload is happening, and then I create my watch task that's always running in the background. All right, let's go back here. In order for us to make this run, we have to stop debugging here, right? Stop debugging. And for the very first time, right, I want to just to show you that this is going to reload and kill some of these ones, these options here, right? This one, and I'll kill, not that one. And then I don't need my grunt anymore, and I don't need this anymore. Just kill some of these so you see them how they're working, right? And then, so here's my task, right? And then here it is right here. And I want to call clear and gulp. If I click gulp, it does this. It should launch my browser right away. Now, again, it's hardware specific. So if it doesn't launch your browser right away, if it didn't work, don't distress, right? Don't distress. Let's make sure that I've saved my gulp file.js, which I probably did. Let's try this again. So save my gulp file.js, and then try that again. So I'm going to clear the screen. Oops. Clear the screen, and then type gulp. And then, bam, it pulls up everything on 8080 right away, right? So as soon as I have my file started, all I need to do is call my gulp command, and I'm seeing my project live, ready to go, right? And remember, every time I make a change, anything up here, this will change, right, automatically. And ladies and gentlemen, this is great for any kind of automation. If you're using mean stack stuff, like if you change something on the mean stack, it'll reload your server, it'll start things up again, and you can use it for many, many things. So remember, now if you follow me along, all you need to do is include this gulp file.js file, as well as all the dependencies we talked about to complete your lab, right? The dependencies would be found under our package.json file, which looks like this. And I've got an exact example online for you to finish it off, right? So it's a free 2% for you, if you think about it, if you just follow my example, right? But I want you to make it your own, which means it's got to have your name on it somewhere, right? So an example of that would be inside your bower.json file, right? You have your name. You also have your name under your package.json file should have your name as well. If it says my name, I'm going to lose some marks, right? It should say your name, right? So that means because you're not exactly copying from me, right? And the reason why I'm saying is I want you to see gulp automation because I'm going to be using it all the time now because I've shown it to you. And I'm going to be testing you on it, right, coming up, right? So we're going to say, hey, you know what? I want to restart my server. I don't have to restart my server anymore. I just have to include this thing. And I'm going to do a really lickety split next time in my project files. And I can do a couple things. I can take my package.json file just like this, instead of going through all that pain, copy it into my project files, my package.json file, and run npm install. And it'll install all my dependencies right away. TSD is only for code hinting, right? I'm showing you so that way you get code hinting. You don't need TSD, but I'm showing you could use TSD even if you're not using a TypeScript file. Install. Yeah. Updates all your files, although to the latest modules, which you don't want. Any questions around this? Because we're pretty much done for the day. So gulp automation, I'll come specific to you, right? I'll help you out, yeah. So gulp automation is really cool because anything can change, right? And notice how it ran the HTML change command over here, and it ran the CSS files changer. We can change it to say checking HTML, checking CSS to make sure it makes sense of it. And now the only thing that's left is for me to pump it up on GitHub. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to stop debugging. And this is where Visual Studio is really cool. I don't have to stop my tasks if I don't want to. So I can do it right through here, right? I can do it right through here. I can say, well, you know what? Added gulp automation to my project. That's including everything, live reload, the whole thing. By the way, one more thing. If you want, you can use gulp. You can use gulp to automatically, and that's why I include the inject module, inject Bower components inside of your HTML, right? You can use gulp for lots of stuff, right? Not just for the stuff I'm talking about right here, right? This is just the beginning. Now, I want you to be able to take this little thing away, this little nugget that I'm giving you, and use it within your workflow. Do you have to use it day to day? No, it's up to you, right? I might ask you some questions about it later on, right? When I say testing you on it, but I'm not going to demand that you use it on an exam, right? It just helps when you can do that, especially if you're using Cloud9, right? And you want to use a Cloud9 service as opposed to something like, your local, Visual Studio Code or something like Brackets. But now you can use this with Brackets as opposed to Visual Studio Code. If I don't want to use Visual Studio Code anymore, I've released you. You can do transpilation with your editor of choice. Okay? And that's it for me. I'll take questions after this.